Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining. If you're joining from Facebook, hello, how are you? And here in the chatmosphere, good evening. Who's here first? Jamie, thank you for hanging out. Jamie, Angela, welcome. Tina's here. Hey, Tina. Welcome. Nice to see you, Lisa. And Jason Hand. Also, oh, thank you so much, Jason. You seem like a new name. Can we welcome Jason Hand to our chatmosphere, everyone? Let's give him a warm welcome. And Chicken Little, this is another great name, Chicken Little Trucker. I love it. Can we also give Chicken Little Trucker a warm welcome? Wow, lots of new names. Frequency. A lot of new ones. Let's welcome all the new people. Moved off grid a month ago and it's been hard to catch. Oh, wow. Well, it's nice that you're here. Wow, I love it. Shawnee, nice to see you. Welcome. Yeah, so I want to talk about something that I had to circle back to. If you remember when we went over the narrative, I'll say, of Nelly Bly. Do you remember that one? She was called the Stunt Journalist. Hey, Johnny Borealis, how you doing? Oh, that's right. Welcome, Jason. Hey, Flower Girl Apothecary, greetings to you. So I want to circle back and I want to connect some dots. And the dots that I'm going to connect are really out there. Okay, so get your tinfoil turbans ready because this one is very, I didn't expect it. Okay, I really stumbled on this one. Hey, Lisa Brower, how are you? Meep, meep. That's right. That's right. Going back to the old band, right? The Meep Meeps are getting back together. Okay, so you're ready, Tina? You got your tinfoil turban. Tina, you'll appreciate this one. I know, because it's really like you will wonder how this connection happened, okay? Hello, Kaliza Marie. You're another new name. Please welcome Kaliza. I love it. So, Johnny, are you ready? You so enjoy when Jen connects the dots. Okay, so I'm going to go in because I want to get your feedback, okay? So I'm presenting this to you in a way like defending a theory, presenting and then defending. And anything that you see, like I invite you to do, if you see something, please say something. Thank you. Okay, so Nelly Bly is the narrative. Let me make it bigger so we can, look at this. Now, let's talk about race and all the things that are uncomfortable, okay? That is what we do here. For anybody new, we do talk race. We're not triggered by race conversations, right, Beowulf? Good evening to you. Welcome. And oh, Molly Moose is here. Welcome, Molly. How are you? Molly's gonna have to like drop your channel. I had the best time with Molly and the Molly Moose family. I just had an interview. They interviewed me over on you. Please, Molly, drop it in there. And I want her to come, and the Molly Moose family to come and talk, because they are amazing, right? And your daughter is just amazingly brilliant. What a beautiful job you've done. And we're so blessed to have you here in our chatmosphere. Whenever you pop up, I love it. Hey, Sean is here. Greetings. Race and grace, right? We talk about race with grace, because it's one of those things that we need to talk about so that we don't have the triggers and we're comfortable with it, because we can dispel a lot of deception that way. Okay, so race with grace. Let's see if I say it right. Ariosto Rodriguez. I love the name. Welcome, and you're new. Good evening to you. I love it. Please welcome all the new people when I see your names pop up. Thank you for joining, Ariosto. Hope I said your name correctly, okay? So this is the deal. We have a lot of racial things going on. We have a lot of conversations that are needed. However, they are triggering some weird responses that I'm not sure. You're going to have to tell me how you feel about it. Hey, Alan, welcome. Love it when you come by. Yay. Nancy, welcome. Welcome, Nancy. Thank you for coming by. So when I talked about Nelly Bly back a few months ago, Nelly Bly has a very strange narrative. Now, this narrative of this woman who was a journalist who broke the I guess glass ceiling of journalism, because women were not in that field. So we're going to link now Joseph Pulitzer. So that's why I have in the thumbnail, if you see above the Nelly Blys, the two depictions of this, I would say, woman, but could have been a real woman. So Joseph Pulitzer, who ran a newspaper that would be the equivalent of the National Enquirer, I think, maybe the New York Post, okay? But he was very prolific when it came to the newspapers. And his only rival was, I think, Randolph Hearst. You can always correct me if Randolph Hearst of the Hearst Publishing House was, I believe, his only rival in terms of the publishing world. So we're talking really big newspapers. That Pulitzer's paper actually was international. So this is, they have a very broad range. And also they had telegrams at that time. So all kinds of wire communication was going on around this time in the 1800s. I know we think that they were not advanced with their technology, but it turns out that we need a lot of re-education about the technology and how things were not that long ago. Electric cars included. We have Elon Musk and the whole electric car issue. It's like the issues that happened in the 1800s, I'll say the mid to late 1800s to the early 1900s, we are having a very interesting, it looks like we're having a parallel in many ways to the same issues that were facing them they are facing us in very similar ways. Now, I would say the geopolitics might look different, but I believe that the territories and just the way that the country was being transformed, it would possibly look different when it comes to the geopolitics, because we had territories, like the Louisiana Purchase. In fact, somebody shared recently, just to get off subject a little, someone shared on Instagram a video. It was from a TikTok that they were showing the actual Louisiana Purchase. And a lot of us, I don't know, me, you think of this as something nebulous, the purchase of the Louisiana territory. And it looked like anything you would see now in terms of a paper transaction of business if you were buying real estate. So it really shocked me that it looks so regular in terms of business, contract, whatever. And it had a map of the Louisiana Purchase. It was fascinating. So if you get a chance or you have seen that particular little video, let us know if you've seen it, because it was just something that it makes everything more down to earth and not so out there. That's why I'm really glad when I listen to Kev Gillespie of Coffee and Kush. I like that he pins people down in like real time, in terms of, I know time can be illusory, but I'm talking about where it matters to where we are now. And it's not some, back in the ancient times when they were doing this and you can't relate. It wasn't that long ago that we lost our nation. And the same people that staged this coup against us, they infiltrated. It's like parasitical, it's like cancerous, like a metastasis. So when they infiltrated in a way that, quite honestly, I had no idea. And it's really something that I'm waking up to in increments, because it seems to be maybe hard to wrap your head around how we lost our country. So again, going back to this narrative, we're talking the 1800s, and this particular time frame, you have the steel magnates that are, Carnegie, and the names of all of the business, the moguls, and they're basically the banking families that we hear a lot about. Rockefeller, like I said, Carnegie, JP Morgan, and that crowd. So when you think about the Industrial Revolution, so I'm bringing us like, back and forth, okay? If you don't mind kind of going up and down this timeline, okay? So the 1800s, we're dealing with big boom in industry. So this is the steel industry. Robber barons, yes, that is like the perfect name for this class of individuals, robber barons. And I would also go as far as to say they are trust busters. And it's now more clear, I'll say, because it's going to clear up more and more as we go forward in our understanding. Now, this group, I see now when I hear people say the scripture that describes a confederacy of nations coming against us. And I see that they got our trust. And of course, when you have moles that are, Judases that turn against their group and sell them out, you can understand why it was easy to take down, a young, what do you want to say, a union that was young. Okay. And I'm just giving more grace to the story of how we fell and understanding more because, again, the years of misdirection that I received in education about how we got here. I was told that my beginning was in slavery. The whole thing. We know that narrative. It's so tired now because we have debunked a lot of the transatlantic slave narrative. And I would think that a lot of you that are white people should be pretty happy that you're not on the hook for that. Like they wanted us to put you on the hook for the slave trade. And that's just something that I just want to talk about freely, is that when we understand who is against all of us and how you were given this narrative that you were part of the slave trade and you did this and you did that. And it left out so much, but people accepted the narratives, and a lot of people may have found out that their families did own slaves, possibly, but a slave owner was not someone of just one race or caste or whatever. I mean, you had to have money, but I don't think the slavery was in the way that we've been told. There were indentured servants. There were people that came over from nations where they were so destitute. And it's very similar to what we see now with the waves of immigrants being, brought in, encouraged to come in. And it's like around in the 1800s, there was another wave of immigration. And that was right through Ellis Island. So this was done also too. They told us because they wanted to have workers, remember, for the Industrial Revolution. We had children that were working in factories and the like. You know the whole story. So bringing in immigrants in large waves, and these immigrants not having a financial foundation, it makes them vulnerable to be used and abused. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it a lot different. So going back to the Nelly Bly narrative, Nelly, the woman's name was Elizabeth Cochran. Okay, so Elizabeth Cochran, the narrative is that she was born to a family, a father who was an immigrant from Ireland, and her mother, I don't know where she was from, but I think the father had 10 children in his first marriage, and then she came from the second marriage. Now, I want to say that the second marriage was to a woman by the last name Kennedy. So, you think about names and I wonder, was that the same Kennedy? So she was born to the Kennedy mother and she had 10 siblings that her father was, married to another woman. Okay. Now I want you to think about what I'm saying. If you're taking notes, it's going to get pretty crazy when I make this next connection. But I want to fill in for anybody that did not know the Nelly Bly story. I actually watched a movie today for research purposes, and it was called 10 Days in the Madhouse. Has anyone watched that movie? It's about Nelly Bly. So it's called 10 Days in the Madhouse. Let me definitely look it up. Has anybody heard of this movie? It was just a little short movie, maybe an hour and some change. But I think that's the exact title. I'm trying to look it up just to make sure I have it right. If you do want to check it out, I thought it was, it was a good little movie. Gave me another aspect of this narrative because I didn't know about the movie initially when I did the first one, my video. But this filled in a few things in terms of what they wanted us to get from this narrative. Okay, so 10 days in the madhouse. Hey, the guru, welcome. Thank you. Peace and love to you, the guru. Okay, so this is the narrative again. This woman, Nelly Bly, her mother becomes widowed, and the dad didn't leave a will. So they were living outside of Pittsburgh. So think of Pittsburgh steel. We're dealing with the steel industry, and we're also dealing with the railroad. So that was really big in the 1800s around this time. So, okay, so they moved into the city of Pittsburgh to have better economic opportunities because the father left the family without economic means. So this is the strange part, is that she's a child, and they say that she wrote this piece, and it was an opinion piece, anonymous opinion piece, to the Pittsburgh Dispatch newspaper, I believe. And the editor and the owner of the paper were so impressed with this girl, and she called herself Orphan Girl, something Orphan Girl. So that's another theme of the times that we're talking about, the 1800s. There is a strong emphasis on orphanages and orphans, right? We had the orphan trains. So a lot of this is going to start to connect. And if you're taking notes, I want you to help me as I'm putting this stuff together. I really do need help. I want us all to do this as a group project because this is a massive crime. And I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to be, overly dramatic when I say this is a crime. We are witnessing the continuation of crimes against humanity that have been so they are beyond belief what has happened to humanity. And now that I'm able to connect more, I'm going to tell you, I've had a hard couple of days, you all. I know you all can relate. It was hard when we woke up to a lot of the stuff, like the Epstein stuff. That was very trauma based, just to learn that things like that happen. Now, this here that I've recently stumbled upon, it's really challenging. All right, everyone, it's a really hard one because I am now beginning to understand identity, and just to know that, we've been lied to for so long, and the levels of these lies and the deception. And it does center around media so much. That's why Joseph Pulitzer is very key to what I'm going to be talking about. Because he and Nelly Bly, they partnered to put forth this, I can't even believe it, it's fantastical story about how she circumnavigated the globe. And remember, we talked about it, that she was going to go on this trip unchaperoned, and just a solo girls trip where she travels the globe, as they say, and she goes to all these different countries. And this was something she was doing to beat the time of a fictional character by Jules Verne, right? And that was strange that she's going to compete against this character. And also, it was very convenient when Nelly Bly made it to Europe. She stopped in France, the narrative goes, to meet with Jules Verne. So it's just odd. And also her competitor, a woman named Bislin, happened to be doing this thing too, going around the globe. So they went on a trip where they then are racing against each other. So Brisbane takes off in the opposite direction, I think maybe hours after this Elizabeth Cochrane, who later took the pen name Nelly Bly. So this was all done for stunt journalism. Thank you, Jason, in 80 days. Yes, Around the World in 80 Days was the title of Jules Verne, right? His book. So they were, well, Nellie or Elizabeth Cochrane was racing against Phineas. What is it? Phineas, whatever the character in that book. So going back to this Elizabeth Cochrane. So her family lived in a suburb called Cochrane Mills outside of Pittsburgh. Then the dad dies. She goes to the city. She writes the opinion piece, gets the attention of Joseph Pulitzer. He starts to really use her to build his platform, his newspaper. He wanted all of this sensationalism. They called it stunt journalism. And she was young. She was a feminist. So it has a really strong feminist undertone, not even an undertone. It's very overt feminism. And this is when the suffragettes were fighting for their 19th Amendment. Am I correct? Is that the women voting amendment 19? Let me know, Chatmosphere. So she was breaking the glass ceiling in journalism. And they gave her a pen name. Now, her pen name was Nelly Bly. Now, Nelly Bly was based on a black woman or Negro woman, okay? And let me go back to the Oh Susanna lyrics. No, it's the actual song is Nelly Bly, and we'll listen to it in a bit. I want to play just that little sample that I put in the original video. So follow me, please, on this really crazy, convoluted, really strange connection between these people. Okay, so Nelly Bly receives a pen name. Elizabeth Cochrane receives the pen name once she gets hired with Joseph, Joseph Pulitzer. So Joseph Pulitzer hires her. She goes on this fantastic voyage around the globe. Her dispatches that she sends back are racist, okay? She's going around talking about Chinese people are like ants. She goes to Somalia and she's like writing all these racist dispatches about all the people that she's coming in contact with. But they didn't cancel her back then for that. So, okay. So she sends these racist dispatches back, and then she comes back. She beats her competitor, Brislin, and it becomes a thing where she becomes famous, and also Pulitzer becomes famous. So he leverages her fame, and he gives her lots of money to do more stunts. Now, another stunt of Nelly, I'll just refer to her now as Nelly. Another stunt is she goes into the Blackwell Island insane asylum. Remember all of those islands out off of New York? There's one that was called Blackwell's Island, and it had an infamous asylum. They had it for women and then for men. So the women's asylum, she wanted to get inside so she could go undercover and do one of these sensational pieces for this newspaper. And she gets everybody to think that she's crazy enough. She goes to a women's boarding home and she acts crazy, so they do call the police and she's committed. So while inside this asylum, she observes the most horrendous things going on. It was so abusive. They've had movies based on the cruel acts that were done in these insane asylums, everyone. This stuff is stuff, it is beyond belief what was happening to people. And the people were sane, they were not insane. You could be put in an asylum for any reason. If you read too much, they had a woman who she read too many books. She was put in an asylum, in the asylum. One woman, she just liked to be clean. She was kind of obsessive about being clean. She was put in the asylum. And you have to understand too, they took away the babies. So what I'm starting to see with the timeline, we had all these wars going on at the same time, everybody. They did not, all these different types of wars going on in different timelines. A lot of them were not all of these different wars. They were really the same war, just the theater of war, as they call it. So they would send the men away to these wars. And I believe now, and this is a tinfoil hat thing, I believe that the World's Fairs were processing centers. So these were where they took the prisoners of war and they processed them through the Red Cross. And they had, tents, and they could put them right in a system of putting them in various penitentiaries or asylums. And they had railroads, so you could take the prisoners of war, you could just take them to all points. And all of these points, you would notice the steel companies, right? And you notice that the asylums were in certain cities and they all look like these big castles, right? Now, again, the men are being separated, so the protectors are being taken away. And this was just such a coordinated way to take our country down, is to keep us tied up in these wars, because they infiltrated, they know how to turn people against each other. So while people are against each other, they don't know who the enemy is, it's easy to overtake people. And so then when you take the men, the women are left unguarded. And that's when it was easy to say, oh, she's hysterical. She's too religious. She reads too much. She's too clean. And then the baby is taken away and the mother is put in the women's asylum. So do you see how easy it was for orphans to it was just a big population of orphans. So, hey, IG, thanks for joining. Anybody who joined, Angela, hey there, and who else? B Wolf, I saw you. So if I didn't get to see you, just know I'm kind of like in a zone, but I'm gonna say hi. But welcome if you're just joining. I'm gonna get to the point. Just please give me some grace because I have to kind of ease into this. It's been really shocking, okay? So I'm going to get to the points. All right. So the babies were purchased by various people, okay? And let's see. Now this is when I'm probably just going to jump right in. Why not? Okay, Nelly Bly. She had, like I said, 10 siblings from her father's first marriage. So I happened to find out that one of her brothers was named George Washington. Okay, let me try to show you this. This was really weird. I'm going to have to go to, let's see, Elizabeth Cochrane's. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to show you of research. Really, I'm telling you, I woke at like probably 3 o'clock, everyone. And I had been thinking about Nelly Bly and just revisiting the Nelly Bly story. But I woke up this morning, like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning. And if that happens to you, you understand when you just have something wake you up and you're like, oh boy, let me look into this. And I didn't expect to find what I found. But I'm very sure of what I'm seeing. I don't know how to explain it. I know what I'm seeing. It is very, what's the word? It's very intuitive, and it's discerning as well. Okay, so can you see this right here? I'll tell you where I am if you want to look it up yourself. This is the wiki tree of Elizabeth Jane Cochrane Seaman. So that was her name also. She married a man named Seaman. So do you see here? Okay, so I'm looking at the family tree of Nelly Bly. All right. This is crazy, everybody. Are you ready? This is the tinfoil time right here. Okay, so we're looking at Elizabeth Cochrane, who goes by Nelly. You see this right here. So you see I'm on the right page with this person. Okay, so she was born 1864. You know, it was Pennsylvania. So she's the daughter of Michael Cochrane. And remember, I told you her mom is Mary Jane Kennedy. So she could be one of the Kennedys. Okay, so you see all the sisters, Marianne, Robert Cochrane, Angela Cochrane. She had half brothers. Okay, so I'm coming around to all the brothers. You see she has one named Thomas Jefferson Cochrane. Okay, then we go on to Julian Cochrane, and here we go, everybody, George Washington Cochrane. Can you imagine when I saw that? That's strange. Does anybody see that as strange? George Washington Cochrane. How is that? Okay, so I go to George Washington Cochrane, and I want to know, how does her half brother have this name? So I looked to finding out. It didn't tell me anything here, I don't think. I had to go look him up somewhere else. So what I did was somehow wound up, I think this is seatbelts. I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to share the next. I'm going to go to George Washington. Okay, let's see. I think this is the one. Yeah. I have a lot of tabs open, so bear with me. How's everybody doing? Does it sound good still? Are we still rocking and rolling? All right. I think we're good here. Okay, now I'm going to read a narrative, a historical narrative of a George Washington and his wife, Mary Jane Washington. And I'm going to ask you if you've ever heard of him, because I hadn't. All right. Make sure that it's bright enough here. Okay. George and Mary Jane Washington found the town of Centerville, now Centralia, on January 8th, 1875. All right. Oh, let me plug in. Hold it, everybody. I'm getting a warning that the battery on the laptop needs to be charged. Okay. Still with me? Okay. So we're back. All right. So this man right here that you see, this is George Washington. Do you see it really well here? This man right here is named George Washington. He founded a town in the Pacific Northwest in what's called the Washington Territory. Had you known about this man? Thank you so much, Phyllis. Bless you. Thank you for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this man you're looking at right now, this is George Washington, born 1817, and he died 1905. All right. Let me take it back to the narrative. Are we back there now? I'm going to read this narrative to you. You hadn't heard about him, Angela? Not you either, Alan? Okay. All right. Mish, how you doing? You hadn't heard of George Washington? Okay, this George Washington. Okay, so I'll read it. On January 8th, 1875, George Washington and his wife, Mary Jane, filed the plat that establishes the town of Centerville, soon to be renamed Centralia, in Lewis County in southwest Washington. Okay, George Washington, a pioneer from Virginia. So this George Washington was born in Virginia. Okay, this is where I need you to really help me, because I want you to help me. I have already made some connections, and this is really mind-blowing for me. I need extra ears and those tinfoil hats, okay, nice and tuned up. Again, George Washington, he was born in Virginia. They are saying a pioneer from Virginia, is the son of an African American slave and a woman of English descent. Now, I want to tell you all that even though it says of English descent, what does that really mean? An African American, we know he would not have been called that in the 1800s, okay? So I'm just saying, if you see something, say something, okay? For the next 30 years, he is a leading citizen, promoter, and benefactor of the town that he found. Washington was born in Frederick County, Virginia. That's very key, everyone, because you know that Virginia is really like the birth, that whole like area is really important to the birth of our nation. So he comes right out of Frederick County, Virginia. He was born August 15th, 1817. When his father, a slave, was sold and taken from the area soon after George's birth. So again, we're talking about how orphans are created. So his father is taken away soon after George is born. And then it says his mother left him with a white couple. Are you ready? Are you ready? His mother left him when he was born with a white couple named Anna and James Cochran, who raised him. Are you ready? Have you made the connection? Cochran. Remember I said there was a sibling of this Elizabeth Cochran or Nelly Bly. Her sibling, one of the Cochran siblings. Well, they were all Cochran because they had the same father. So her brother is named George Washington Cochran. And now a Cochran has this child that they're raising, a Negro child. Isn't this a little weird, or am I tripping? Okay, so let me finish telling it how they're telling us. Okay, so this Cochran family raised him while George was still a child. The Cochrans moved west to Ohio and then to Missouri. I want you all to tell me how this sounds to you. Does this make a lot of sense? If it's sounding like something, please share with me. So this Cochran family with this Negro baby moves to Ohio from Virginia, then to Missouri. As an adult, Washington tried his hand at several businesses in Missouri and Illinois, but was frustrated each time by discriminatory laws. By 1850, he decided to head further west in the hope of finding more freedom. The Cochrans joined him, and on March 15, 1850, the family set out with a wagon train heading west. Does any of this make sense? Okay, they settled first in Oregon City, but within a few years crossed the Columbia River into what would soon become Washington Territory, staking a claim. In 1852, Washington began a claim where the Schukumchuck River joins the Chehalis River, becoming the fourth settler in the area, where he could later found the town of Centralia. The spot had long been home to the Chehalis Indians, and Washington recognized the river junction as a prime spot for a settlement. He cleared land, built a cabin, and began farming. Now, I want to also note that the name George means farmer. It means the worker of the earth. So the name itself means farmer. So take note of that. Okay, so he began farming because Oregon Territory had passed a law barring settlement by African Americans. Now, why would Oregon be passing laws barring African Americans? Washington had James and Anna Cochran file a claim under the Donation Land Claim Act for 640 acres in the area. When the claim was proved up by 4 years residence and Washington Territory, which did not bar African American ownership, had come into existence, the Cochrans deeded the property to Washington. When he was in his 50s, some years after Anna and James Cochran had died, Washington met and married Mary Jane Kunes or Corney, a widow of African American and Jewish descent. In 1872, the Northern Pacific Railroad, advancing north from the Columbia River to Puget Sound, crossed the Washington's land. They recognized that their land would be a central point on the railroad between Kalama on the Columbia and Tacoma on the Sound, and decided to start a town on the site. Over the supper table, they laid out a town centered around a little store that their neighborhood Isaac Wingart operated nearby. Platting the town. On January 8, 1875, the Washingtons filed the plat for their town, which they called Centerville, at the Lewis County Courthouse in nearby Chehalis. The initial plat consisted of 4 blocks platted into lots, which Washington offered for sale at $10 per lot to anyone who would settle in the town. Washington later filed additional plats adding to the size of the town. The Washingtons gave land to their Baptist congregation for a church and cemetery and helped build the church. They also set aside land for a public square, which became Centralia City Park, now named George Washington Park. All right. How's that sounding? Really something I didn't know. I was blown away. Okay, I'll finish reading this narrative. The town grew steadily, but while settlers liked the location and the favorable terms Washington offered, they did not care for the name Centerville, in part because the town was confused with one of the same name near Goldendale, Klickitat County. By 1883, the name was changed to Centralia, based on the suggestion from a settler from Centralia, Illinois. In 1886, Centralia was incorporated. By 1889, when Washington Territory became a state, are you listening? Washington Territory became a state. The population of Centralia was nearly 1,000. Those were boom times, and within little more than a year, the population had climbed to more than 3,000. By 1891, George Washington had sold 2,000 lots. A civic leader. Mary Jane Washington died in 1888. George Washington remained an active civic leader in the town he and his wife had founded. He was noted for his willingness to help fellow residents in many ways, including selling property for little money down, offering loans at no interest, and providing work when no other was available. So this is a very kind, good man. Washington's assistance became crucial when the panic of 1893. So now we see the dirty games and shenanigans of the bankers, right? So they have a panic that happens, and we are seeing the same types of games, right? So this was the panic of 1893. It hit Centralia along with the rest of the country, went into an economic downspin for most of the decade. On his own initiative, Washington organized a private relief program for needy residents. He drove to Portland, Oregon by wagon to bring back tons of staples like rice, flour, and sugar, which he distributed along with lard and bacon that he brought wholesale. Washington declined to foreclose on mortgages he held. And when other properties went up for auction, he bought them to save the town from absentee ownership or bankruptcy. Although population and property values declined, Centralia survived, and by the end of the decade began to rebound, entering the 20th century with a population of around 1,600. Washington remained active and involved in business and civic affairs until shortly before his death on August 26, 1905, 11 days after his 88th birthday. The mayor proclaimed a day of mourning, asking that all businesses close during Washington's funeral. Reputed to be the largest in Centralia's history, the funeral was held at the Baptist church Washington had supported, and the founder of Centralia was buried in the cemetery he donated. Okay, now this was an amazing man who did similar to what you think of Joseph. He was like a Joseph to this town that he founded. He made sure that even though the banksters were playing their games and trying to, just tank the economy and starve people out, he went ahead and bought staples enough to make sure everybody was good. And he loaned money without interest. So why don't we know about this man who founded a whole town in Washington? How is it? I never heard of this. Now it gets more interesting. Now, okay, are you all on the same page when I made the connection now with Nelly Bly or this Elizabeth Cochran? Do you see what I'm saying? So her brother, I don't know what he did, but see, people stole names. They stole identities. So her brother having this name does not make sense, where he would be, again, where is it? George Washington Cochran. So it says he's born 1845. And then it says that this George that we're talking about that founded the town was born 1875. No, he was born 1817. Okay, so the George Washington born 1817, and how would that work? I don't know math-wise how this would work out, but I don't believe a lot of the dates either. So 1845 to 1914. Something's off. I think that names are used in some weird way, and the weirdness, because she took a name, Nelly took a name of a Negro woman who the song was about. Let me play it. Okay, so they say that this songwriter, his name that wrote these, see, back then they were doing blackface, everyone. This is a part of the history that a lot of people find this uncomfortable. But they were putting blackface on and performing these minstrel shows. So this is around the time of these minstrel shows. And the man that wrote the Nelly Bly song, his name was Foster. It doesn't make sense that he wrote this song, and I'm going to play it a little bit so you can tell me, how would this man have written this song? It does not, it just doesn't work out. So, okay, let me get to that part of my, I took a lot of notes here. Okay. And these connections, I'm going to continue making them, because I'm going to have to put them in a way that I could, like, I don't know, I'm going to have to put it on a big board or something, because I can make all of these connections. So the man that wrote the song, Foster, he did these minstrel shows. So why is it that they want to put black paint on their face? What is that about? Like, do you know what? So the minstrels started in 1843. So the old Susanna song was published in 1848. So it's a lot of publishing that is going on, because remember I talked about Scott Joplin, who I did not know was a Negro. I don't know, everybody. I've been out to lunch. I did not know Scott Joplin, who wrote the songs, ragtime songs, and he was befriended by a German teacher. And then it just gets weird, the whole thing. So he also went into one of these World's Fairs. So Nelly Bly began to use the name, or Elizabeth Cochran began to use, they called it her pen name. But now we see if they jump in and out. There you go, Sean. Sean says, presto changeo, rearrangeo. Yes, and that's the thing. These people play several different people. It's like they said, all the world is a stage. So I'm starting to detect that it's a lot of land stealing going on, right? Name, identity, and land stealing. So this is like a cold case. So how did this Negro man, George Washington, who was born in Virginia, go over to Washington Territory and found a town? Can anybody help me understand how that happened? And he was supposedly born a slave. How is it that this happened? Okay, so we have the railroad, so we know J.P. Morgan, right? We have all these like connections for this time. So he was a prominent man. He was good in business. Now, there was something called the Compromise of 1850. So this was something that I wanted to look into. And also laws of exclusion. So George Washington was facing a lot of racism. So they say that a lot of like immigrants were coming over into Washington. Now, I don't know how it was, but he was going through a whole lot of like racial discrimination when it came to the land and everything. But then they couldn't stop him because his name is Washington. I mean, come on, everybody. Don't you see it now? If you see it, please tell us what you're seeing. Okay, so they have a mural of this man. They recently had like a bicentennial celebration. They have a statue of he and his wife. So his wife is credited with also being a co-founder of this town. So in 1872, again, the Northern Pacific Railway comes through his property, his land. So they passed a law barring settlement by African Americans, the Oregon Territory did. But now I want to look up the Compromise of 1850 because it was something that hit him and I guess his wife. Okay, so the Compromise of 1850. Let me write it. And it's something else I want to. Okay, wow, came right up. Did it hear me? Do you hear me? And I say, hey, how you doing? Okay, so Tina asks, thank you. I want to see, was this the son of the president? Well, Tina, I'm telling you, all theories are welcome because you know this is new for me. Like I woke up this morning not knowing this until I just saw, because something said look into Nelly Bly again. And then I was like, when I saw her brother's name, I don't know how I came across that she had a brother, George Washington Cochran. And I was like, okay, something is weird. Let's see, IG, what are you saying? Okay, no, the Never Slaves, they were the first, they had to be stopped. So that's when Margaret Sugar stepped in and created the evil plan to dumb down all humanity. Yeah, okay, that didn't fit the agenda. Okay, there you are. There you are. What other lines? Misha saying, what's your theory, Mish? You said lineage of George Washington somehow through a mistress? Not sure, Mish. Because let's see, Angela's saying, no, a slave's orphaned baby. And Sean, what are you saying, Sean? Real estate theft. Yeah, they never do that, right? Right, yeah. Liz is saying, I need to watch that video on Scott Joplin. Oh, yeah. I want to do more on Scott Joplin. I feel like these are just little, like, these are just a start to this stuff. Because, like I said, I want to do a whole thing where I connect the whole thing. Like, I don't know if I do like a mind map or something, because all of the connections, they are astounding. But okay, let me talk about this Compromise of 1850. Okay, it says that the Compromise of 1850 was a package of 5 separate bills passed by the United States Congress in September 1850 that diffused a political confrontation between slave and free states on the status of territories acquired in the Mexican-American War. Oh. It was also set Texas Western and Northern borders and included provisions addressing fugitive slaves and the slave trade. The compromise was designed by Whig Senator Henry Clay and Democratic Senator Stephen A. Douglas with the support of President Millard Fillmore. Very interesting. So you have the Compromise of 1850, and there were laws of exclusion. So they kept the population of the Negro down to 1%. So if you notice, like how we would laugh about, remember when Black Lives Matter were doing their dumb stuff out there in Portland and Seattle, and they were like, Black Lives Matter with their sign, and you were like, well, where are the black people? Because it's nothing but a bunch of white people with like Kool-Aid colored hair, right? And these guys that look like they eat soy hamburgers every day, right? So I know we were all laughing about that. Come on, you all noticed there were no black people out there. So I know, come on, this is the elephant in the room. Are there many black people that live out in Seattle and Portland? Tell me, everybody, because I mean, I have my thoughts, but there is something that was put in place. You know it's true, Lisa and IG. So why is it that the population in those areas would be 1%? Okay? It's because they have laws of exclusion. So when you have these people out here doing this virtue signaling that they love black people, they need to answer for why they only have 1% black population in Washington and Oregon. So they need to ask themselves, because I mean, you can't live out there and not notice the elephant in the room, right? So if Black Lives Matter so much, why do they have laws of exclusion? It keeps the black population low. Okay, so that's an interesting thing. Okay, all right, so moving on, let's see. Okay, at some point, George Washington had gotten sick, and they took him, the narrative is they took him to somewhere. I think they didn't want to treat him. He was taken to some army type of place, and they didn't want to treat him. I don't want to pull it up right now, but I just want to let you know. He became ill. Then the doctor poisoned him. So he was poisoned by a doctor. He was given something called calomel. And after he took the calomel given to him by the doctor, he became very ill. It caused him to lose his hair. Now, they said that he wore wigs after that. Okay? He named the streets in his town after biblical references. All right? And he said, okay, are you ready? Back to the tinfoil. Okay, he set aside land for a park. Guess what sits on the land where this set aside land? Guess what sits on it? The Carnegie Library sits on it. So a Carnegie Library sitting on this land that was set aside. And shortly after he passed away is when they had the Alaskan gold rush of 1898. So we're dealing with a gold rush. And they said his funeral was one of the biggest funerals ever in that town, historically. His favorite song that was sung at his funeral was called Salem's Bright King. That was his favorite song, they said. Salem's Bright King. So, let's see. I want to talk about some other connections. What are you guys saying? Let me see. Jason's saying actors. Okay. IG, what are you saying? FYI, y'all, did anyone hear yesterday that the United Nations were introducing the new 10? Really? No, I didn't hear about that. Misha's saying there's black family relatives of Washington that are fighting for recognition. Yeah, well, when you say, then what does that make Washington? Because I want to challenge everybody that the narrative of George Washington that we have doesn't make sense, because I already asked a question like, have you ever met a white Washington? Have you ever met a black Washington? So the thing is that there's something that we need to really work out about George Washington, because something doesn't make sense when you think about just logically. I have met so many Washingtons. They're all black. I mean, my whole family on that side is Washington. And it's a big family of Washingtons. Every basketball player that you see named Washington, they're all black. I mean, in Philadelphia, we have a news anchor named Yuki Washington. You have Denzel Washington. You have Kerry Washington. You have Tamia Washington, who's married to Grant Hill. You have Freddie Washington, who was the woman who played in the movie Imitation of Life. You have Isaiah Washington, who played in whatever that hospital drama was. Remember Isaiah Washington? Okay, so I can go on and on. You have Booker T. Washington. You have George Washington Carver. You have now this Washington who founded a whole town in Washington. So if all of us are, look at us, this is how we look. So how is it that we would be fighting for recognition in the Washington family when we're the only people that I know that carry the name? So what do we really know that's true about George Washington? That's what I really want to get to the bottom of it, because nothing is making sense. Remember, we've been lied to. We have been lied to. That's right, Denzel. Have you, Jason? I have never met a white Washington. So this is why I say we need to talk about this race stuff, and we need to just talk about, come on, let's not let the elephant be in the middle of the room here and we act like it's not there. So if you never met a white Washington, Jason, I never met a white Washington. I traveled all over this world, never met a white Washington. Why is that? I want to ask. And you can name, at least you know me, you know of me, you could name probably a few on your hand. Black Washingtons. Again, why is that? Why? And the name Washington, now we're looking at, you have Washington State. I did not know that a George Washington, I mean, I'm listening and learning from Kev Gillespie about a lot of this, and I'm trying to get a lot of it together so I can understand it. But you have Washington, D.C. Why? You have all these Washington townships, Washington this, Washington that. So what's up, everybody? Sean says, Washington lives matter. There you go. Washington lives matter. Why do we have to be recognized? Because we need to know what's up. Like, I need you all to help me. John says he sends, where's my spoon? Where's my spoon? Yes, everybody, can we just all get along? Whitewashing. Exactly. It's like every picture that you've seen of George Washington, he's got what? White hair. He's a white dude. Why is that? Well, you have to tell me. Why? Phyllis says, hey, oh, Karen's here. Karen, welcome, Karen. Negrescence. I told you all I was going to figure out this negrescence thing. Okay, so, all right. One of the quotes by this George Washington that founded this town, he said, I want to do right by my fellow men, and if I do, I'll never lose anything by it. He promoted unity, everyone, to the community he founded. And the testaments of his character, the way he was spoken of. And I looked at lots and lots of narratives, and it was all of the same, like he was a great man. And some people said that he was the best man that they ever knew. And then someone said when he laughed, you could hear him a block away. Another person said he was the most generous man that they ever met. And he nearly gave away all of his money before he died. So what is really going on? And another thing about this narrative, going back to the Nelly Bly, there was more to this Nelly Bly. She went over, oh yeah, I wanted to tell you this about these asylums. All right, so the asylums, what I'm sensing is through these wars, how they have us thinking that these wars were all this other stuff. I believe it was all simultaneously going on to take the country down and to see, there were a lot of Negro people in politics, okay, state level politics. They were Republicans and they were like the heads of states. And what happened was there was a coup. Okay, so you have the Democrats back then, they had a mob mentality. They would mob different cities. Okay, you heard about the way they would go in, they would flood cities. The Army Corps of Engineers, everybody, if you're a tinfoil hat, you know the people that said what they thought about Hurricane Katrina. Okay, so when you hear Army Corps of Engineers and floods and things like that, I'm just saying, for people that you can't ever criticize the military, we have to be real. There is a segment of our military that is not what we think, okay? So there was a lot going on. In fact, one of these songs, Oh Susanna, was a Negro minstrel song. This was actually played at the inauguration of, this was at the Democratic Convention. So they played Old Susanna in 1912, the Democratic Convention. So these minstrels, I want to talk about these minstrels, and also when Nelly Bly went over to the insane asylum, they were putting people who were sane inside of these places. They were putting them in cold baths. They weren't cleaning the bath water. It was really horrible what they were doing, beating these women. And they had German, I hate to say it, like in the movie I watched, they portrayed the nurses as German nurses. So I mean, it's like, Nurse Ratched on steroids. So the nurses were just beating I hate to say inmates, but yeah, the inmates, beating them up, freezing them. And when the inmates would die, I want to make a note that you understand what was happening in these asylums. They had crematories inside the asylums. So they were giving the inmates opium. So they were making these people crazy, giving them opium and other types of medications. And when they would kill them because of all the medical experiments they were doing, they would send them right to the crematorium. And they said that it always had a very strange smell coming from that island. So this is Blackwell's Island. It's now called Roosevelt Island. Let me know, New Yorkers, am I correct that it's now called Roosevelt Island? So I want to talk about this blackface stuff. But before I do, let me stop my screen. I want to play the music that goes along with this Nelly Bly. Why not? Let's do another one. Another listen.
New job, the editor at the paper gave her the name Nelly Bly. Now, he gave her the name because of a popular song called Nelly Bly by Stephen Foster. It was about a black woman. Yes, and Stephen Foster, he did lots of music like Oh Susanna, which I found out was another minstrel troupe blackface song. Yes, and also used at the 1912 National Convention for the Democratic Party. Let's take a little listen to Nelly Bly. Anyway, they
Hey everybody, I just wanted to stop before I played it to show you that this is the music book. You see it says a Negro melody. Now, why would this man Foster, if I look, his whole thing is very odd, okay? But he's a white guy, okay? He may be, if we look into his narrative, we'll probably find out some other details about him, right? Certain tribal affiliations. But he so-called wrote this song. Why would he write a Negro melody? Does that make any sense? Hey, Joseph, welcome. Yes, Joseph, God only knows what experiments they were doing they were doing some gruesome experiments. You're right. So Nelly Bly, the name that Elizabeth Cochran took, okay, again, Elizabeth Cochran, a woman who broke the ceiling, became a star under, I would say her mentor would be Pulitzer, Joseph Pulitzer. Okay. So her brother, George Washington Cochran, I'm wondering if there's a connection with the Cochrans that took a baby named George Washington and took the baby from Virginia all the way to Washington. Something is weird. So then this woman, Elizabeth Cochran, takes the name Nelly Bly, and it's from a Negro melody. And it's also sung by the Ethiopian serenaders. So something's weird. Okay, so I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna mute myself so it doesn't have an echo. Let me know if there's an echo.
changed the name of Nelly to the IE instead of Y. They said it was an accident, but it's the 1800s. We don't trust it.
Nelly Bly, bring the broom along. We'll sweep the kitchen clean, my dear, and have a little song. Poke the wood, my lady love, and make the fire burn. And while I take the banjo down, just give the mash a turn. Hey, Nelly, ho, Nelly, listen, love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody. Hey, Nelly, oh, Nelly, listen, love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody. Nelly Bly have a voice like the turtle dove. I hears it in the meadow, and I hears it in the grove. Now
where to
Nelly Bly have a heart warm as cup of tea, and bigger than the sweet potato down in Tennessee. Hey, Nelly, ho, Nelly, listen, love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody. Hey, Nelly, ho, Nelly, listen, love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody. Nelly Bly shuts her eye when she goes to sleep. When she wakens up again, her eyeballs begin to peep. The way she walks, she lifts her foot and then she brings it down. And when at night stirs music there in that part of the town. Hey Nelly, ho Nelly, listen love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody. Hey Nelly, oh Nelly, listen love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody. Nelly Bly, never, never sigh. Never bring the teardrop to the corner of your eye. For the pie is made of pumpkins and the mush is made of corn. And there's corn and pumpkins, plenty love, a lying in the barn. Hey Nelly, ho Nelly, listen love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody. Hey Nelly, oh Nelly, listen love to me. I'll sing for you, play for you, a dulcet melody.
Can I talk to the manager?
Okay, so that was a little example of this music, and Stephen Foster wrote this kind of music that was called minstrel music. So he was also from Pennsylvania, and he was born in 1826. So it's a weird thing that he would write songs that are used in blackface minstrel shows. Not sure what's going on with all of that, but it goes to show that all of these people are contemporaries of each other. It wasn't like this was all happening all these different times, okay? I want to note something about the asylums. Another thing besides them having crematoriums, that when the inmates died, the death certificates were signed in a deceptive way, not to give away that they died from the abuse. So the death certificates were wrong, and the nurses and doctors would often take the property of these people. So there was a lot of theft of property, of just money and all kinds of things. So I just wanted to also show that this was really horrible, these asylums. I'm going to look into them more, but I really wanted to just bring this just to the forefront. I'll be looking into this more, this whole Nelly Bly, but this Washington thing. Like, what is this about? Why is it that two men by the name of Washington, because this was also the narrative with George Washington Carver, is that he was also an orphan that was adopted by a German family. And I won't say much more than that. You could fill in the the spaces there. So those two narratives, I'll probably look at them side by side. So now we are aware that there is a man, George Washington, who founded a town in Washington state called Centerville, and it became Centralia. And he was adopted, made to be an orphan. He was adopted by a Cochran family. And Nelly Bly, her name is Elizabeth Cochran. So I am suspecting that all of these people worked together, agents of some sort. You see Pulitzer involved. So anybody who doesn't know who Joseph Pulitzer, let me read his wiki. I'll kick the wiki on Joseph Pulitzer. Okay. So Joseph Pulitzer, he was born in 1847. He was Hungarian. He had a newspaper, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the New York World. He became a leading national figure in the Democratic Party. Isn't that interesting? He was elected congressman from New York. He crusaded against big business. And like I said, he was in fierce competition with William Randolph Hearst. You know the Pulitzer Prize. This is who this is after this man. So he was born as Pulitzer Joseph and Pulitzer. I guess it's just spelled different. And the Pulitzers were among several Jewish families. Jewish families living in the area had established a reputation as merchants and shopkeepers. Okay, so there's a lot of involvement in armies. He joined militaries, Civil War, joining the French Foreign Legion. Just a lot of interesting things. You could look it up yourself, Pulitzer. But a lot of this is centered around the Democratic Party as well. And a lot of things that were going on at this time. The mob, the democracy of like mob rule, and how a lot of mobs were going through different towns and burning them down. There was so many massacres and fires and floods all happening at the same time. So I just want us to remember that as we start putting more things together moving forward. And again, this Stephen Foster, who wrote this Nelly Bly, we're supposed to believe that he wrote a song that has a certain vernacular that he wouldn't have really been too familiar with. And why would he write it about a Negro and it has Ethiopian serenaders in it? Like, it's a strange thing, but I'm going to continue to stay on this, especially how they are pushing so hard in the culture to destroy people like that speak out about things and are starting to make connections of identity, and it's causing a rippling of persecution. I don't know what to really think of it, but I know that I want to look into things more. The harder they push, the more I'm going to find out who they are and what their crimes have been, the more they push. So just know, I don't know what to think about Kyrie and everything, because like I said, I want to make a point. Maybe I need to look this up so I can show you. This thing that Kyrie is in trouble for. The cover, I described it to you. The cover of this documentary has a fist, and the fist is something that is not a good symbol when you look back into the origin of it. And it stands for like that dead black fist. So it's seen in the socialist, Marxist, the way that they basically come into cultures and just subvert the culture. And that's what you see even in the Elizabeth Cochrane. She was very focused on women doing things better than men. And we see where that has led us in this nation, with women believing that they're better than men and wanting to be in competition. And it's just led us to where we are now. So that's part of the way that they come in and usurp a culture, and they subvert all of the norms. And this has been over the course of, look at it's not been that long, but they've been at it for a while now, and we have been asleep, but they have been after the people. And it is just horrible how right now the attacks for anybody who wants to just be a free person and speak about just anything, just be free to decide what you want to do with your body even. So the Kyrie thing, I'm not too sure about, because I have a suspicion that because they're so threatened by this information coming out, that people are learning about their identities, that they could start sort of a misdirection. Okay, you see what I'm saying? And I believe the misdirection is to keep the American Negro always looking at Africa as if we are from Africa. So that's what I worry about. I'm not worried, but that's the concern I have with some of this stuff that wants to still foster this transatlantic slave narrative and the slavery type of the way that they see slavery. Now, I think, again, it's prisoners of war that were turned into, the federalized workers and things like that. And yes, some people might have been enslaved in a sense where they're prison camps, like internment camps, so it's just not the stuff that Oprah Winfrey and Steven Spielberg wanted us to always be bombarded with. I do not believe that narrative that Steven Spielberg wants us to believe. But again, I'm going to stay on this particular type of information because I believe it's getting closer to finding out a lot of things that's going to literally shift everything. It's going to shift powerfully, because when the people that have been asleep and not known who they are, when they wake up and they begin to stand upright and become lawful, let me tell you, this country will see something that is unbelievable when it comes to Jubilee and a Renaissance. So it should be what we all want. Now, this group, this Democratic, this faction, they want to keep the Negro close. They want lawlessness in the towns and cities. Look at how they treat the Negro. And if you look at the history going back to Joseph Pulitzer saying he's a Democrat, and them playing these minstrel blackface songs, these are the people that put blackface on. You know that the Canadian Prime Minister, he has pictures in blackface, and a lot of people have pictures where they've done blackface. I think, didn't Crazy Nancy have pictures in blackface? So there's something to this group. They have such a deep hatred for the Negro. They do not believe that the Negro or the colored person has any value or intelligence. And they have been on a campaign and a crusade to keep the Negro controlled, okay? Totally controlled. And they don't want their Negroes to get out of line, okay? Or they will lose money, they will lose their lives sometimes, okay? And they're showing so much right now. The more they push, I know one thing: we are in prayer, we are not afraid, and this is what we need, to be courageous, because this is ridiculous what's happening right now. So I think it's meant to make us all afraid that we won't speak and say things. And when we notice things, even in their narratives, look at what I just found in their narrative. They tell on themselves because they haven't had a chance to cover their tracks. You know, from the 1800s on to now, they have lost the narrative, even though, you know, Joseph Pulitzer, media, you see media, it's over. A lot of the Democratic talking heads are losing their jobs. You see what's happening with Twitter. I don't know if Elon Musk is good or bad. I don't know. All I know is that Twitter is going through a big change. It's not like we need these things. I mean, we lived without Twitter. So if it goes away, you know, if Elon just takes it as a loss and lets it just crash, will we really miss it? That's all I want to know. Will we miss it? So it's not necessary. So whatever happens with that happens. But a lot of people are freaking out. I don't know what's going to happen with these midterms and all of this. It's a really weird thing we have. And, you know, you see little clips of Joe Biden talking about, oh, the democracy is under threat. They are Democrats to their core. These are the very people that put the black face on and do the things like this. This is how I see them. Because this is who they were from these times, the 1800s. They haven't changed. And they betray the people. They get in coordination with foreign powers. They sell out. They are Benedict Arnolds. They are Judases. They are not America first type of people. So, you know, we're going to see. I don't really know. I don't know what to say anymore. We're at a place where it's just so unreal what's happening. But I'm going to continue to connect more dots. And just to sum up where we are with this particular narrative that I found, again, something is going on with the orphans that were created, the names that were stolen, and the identities. This is all going to come up. This is a crime. This is like I'm opening a cold crime, okay? This is a cold case. And I'm going to cover George Washington Carver at some point because it's a similar narrative where he was orphaned, raised by a German family. So again, also this with a banjo on my knee. That's another one of the minstrel songs, a banjo. So you see, even with the Scott Joplin, that Scott Joplin, he learned to play banjo. His mother played banjo. They played mandolins, pianos. And see, that destroys the slave narrative. How did they play all of these, you know, violins and things like that? So the song with a banjo on my knee was another one of these Negro minstrels. So it's just very interesting. I will continue again. I'm very interested in this George Washington who founded the town in Washington. Boy, oh boy. Wow. Thank you for joining. Jason Han, thank you so much for joining and being active in our chatmosphere. It's been lovely having you. You have to come back. We are all travelers lost, aren't we? We all have to be redesignated and reclassified, right? Lost at sea. That's right. Hey, Talkie Cat, you're a new name. Let's welcome Talkie Cat. I like the name. Only the truth will set us free. Love and true light. That's right. Johnny Borealis, thank you. Don't stop, Jen. We are all good. I'm glad you're all ears because I'm interested in the truth, okay? However it pans out. I'm okay with whatever it is. I'm not so rigid that I have to hold on to some expectation, some reality, something that I have in my mind. Because this is turning out to be a shocking thing. And when I looked at this man, George Washington, and learned about him and how good he was to the people of his town, and like I said, he was a Joseph. He got a staple and a storehouse so that no one in his town went hungry. He gave loans without interest. And just beautiful things said about him when he passed away. He and his wife, okay? So his wife, they say she was Negro and Jewish. All right? And it is interesting is all Girl Code, are you here? Thank you, Girl Code. Oh my gosh. She says I made it. Yay, you made it. Well, thank you. So I'm going to keep looking into it. Eventually, I foresee I'm going to have a Washington family reunion. I know it sounds crazy. I'm going to have to meet with these Washingtons. We're going to have to get on the same page and find out what's up with this name, okay? What's really going on here, okay? We need a family reunion meeting, okay? All the Washingtons. Got to figure out what is what here. Who is who? And what's up with this George Washington, the farmer, the worker of the earth. That's what George means. So, yeah, that's it for now. And I think about George, the George magazine. I'm going to go through a whole George thing. Remember I talked about that? We're going to talk about the Georges, good and bad. George, what's up with the name? By George. I'll probably call it By George. So thank you again. B. Wolf says, once a paradigm is deconstructed, it's easier to let go of all future beliefs. Thank you, B. Wolf. And that's what's happening. All of these paradigms are shifting and being deconstructed. And it feels weird, I guess. So as we put together the narratives and the proper ones and find out what has happened to us, I will be very happy to put more together. Talkie Cat says, I'm related to Martha Washington. Look above for some info I have found over the years. Love Cat. Oh, wow. I would love that, Talkie Cat. Okay, I'll have to look above to see what you added. Thank you. And if you've sent any super chats, I want to thank you. If I missed it, I was in a zone. Hey, Amber. Nice to see you, Amber. None of us want to hold on to a low. Yeah, that's the truth. That's right. Yes, we're going to keep being courageous with the truth. Good night, Tina. Love and blessings to you. Thanks for joining. And yeah, we will get through it together. And yeah. So I'll see you around, everybody. I think I've added, it's so much more to it. You know what I'm saying? But I just wanted to give you this overview so I fill in more things. And again, I would appreciate anybody if you heard anything and later you start thinking and you might come across something, just add, just please think of me and put a comment or hit me up on the socials. I'm Jenny the John on Instagram, JennyEason. I'm on, all of it the same name, okay? And if you again want a complimentary, like I've told you, you hit me up on the socials, set up a time. I've been having a good time with you all. We've been having great sessions, okay? And this is education again. If you have questions about all kinds of things that deal with money and finances, and you want to make sure you are in a good position, you're properly protected, you have a 401k, you want to know what's going on, your pension, you don't want to give it all away to the government in taxes, you need protection, you need good advice. It's complimentary to set up a time with me, and we can make sure we all have this information, because that's what this is all about, just having the proper information. All right, so we want this information to be open sourced, okay? Open source information. It'll be a better society when we look at things that way. Open source help us all to rise. And we're going to rise into this jubilee. And we need good people that have resources so they can be servant leaders, right? All right, so thank you, Johnny Borealis. Bless you. All right, I love you all. Take care, and I'll see you real soon.